And again.
Power of editing. Woo! Thank you. I'll take that.
Thank you, Rosh.
Beautiful. Whoa! Beautiful. Whoa! Beautiful. Whoa!
Oh no! Oh my!
Hope we got that on video. Are you okay?
Okay. When chaos ensues.
This is good omen.
I guess that's our opener, huh?
Yes. How much of this are we
How
keeping?
rituals keep us safe in the midst of chaos.
Hi, how's it going? How you doing?
Oh shit!
I'm alive. I can't say the same for my monkey head. My monkey skull
Dude, that stone might have hit you in the knee.
has lost his.
Yeah, the monkey hit you in the knee.
It's either in the monkey, the breath.
It was Hanuman.
That's an actual monkey skull, or a quartz, half of a quartz geode. All right, I just feel blessed. I think that was a blessing. Oh, by the way, we could talk about what's on the door. Like
Today,
this,
well, we should introduce who our guest is, but
this piece is from my daughter Jordania. She made this dream catcher for me. You can find her on Instagram at Cultured Vulture. She does commissions. It's amazing. Can you hold this for me for just one moment, darling? Okay, no head injuries. We're okay.
A small knee injury, but
Well, you heard that gorgeous song from our equally gorgeous friend Roshni, part of the Triple Tribe. I'm sure you've heard us mention her, our most mentioned friend on the
Twice.
podcast.
I've counted.
twice.
I'm serious. I think it's been 3. I think in the new episode we mentioned you.
Oh,
again.
okay.
Gotta
I gotta
keep
get up
up.
to date.
So this was an impromptu thing today. Rosh texted me and asked what we were doing. And I was like, well, we're recording today. You want to come and record? And maybe we can go and do a photo shoot in the woods later.
Yes.
And-
I was like,
Yeah.
well, I guess so. I guess that's what's happening. Now we're here.
I gotta rise
Now
up.
we're here, and now, in the now, here we are. Oh, thank you for playing for us.
Yeah.
So precious.
Yeah.
You
I've been
really brought down
practicing.
the house.
You did it. Oh my god.
Did it.
Wow. Yeah.
I did it, y'all.
Can you
Power
can
of
you hear
music.
this? We just-
I can hear it. It's fabulous.
I'm having fun with these buttons because we just got this new recorder and it has like a little sound pad. So when I hit this button, you can't hear it, but there's laughter.
I think you're a little close to your mic.
There's
though.
laughter in the headphones.
Yes,
And then
it's
this one's
fantastic.
Applause. When she introduced you, I hit the applause button.
Hey.
So upgrade.
Upgrades.
Love it.
Anyways, so you want to explain our nice, beautiful set that we have today?
Oh my god.
Oh. So in these spoken of text messages, I asked.
Oh, nice
Roshni.
transition.
They invited me to bring flour, and I
If she would
instead
bring flowers.
brought a bouquet of them instead of,
Oops.
you know, what we typically call flour.
So yeah, I was like, would you
Hippie
bring
code
some
guy.
flowers with you? And she even called me and was like, where would you like these flowers from? Do you have a specific place? I was like, well, I was hoping like your neighbor or something.
guy.
but-
I literally just assumed like your neighborhood Walmart.
Exactly. But flowers.
I was like, all right, I'm gonna
So
go to
I
the
asked
store
her to
then.
go
for
to
sure.
Neighborhood Flowers. And she got me the most beautiful bouquet of flowers.
Yeah, they are pretty beautiful. Though.
It was so beautiful. She's
I thought she
coming
was
up the
trolling us this whole
driveway
time,
and
but
she has these gorgeous
she's just
bouquets in
autistic,
her
we found
hand.
out.
Yay,
I brought you
Autistic
flowers.
clubs. So now we have these gorgeous flowers on set, and then B decided to use the marigold backdrop to extendo
Yes, it's
I'm an interior
gorgeous.
decorator on the side.
on the side.
Gorgeous.
Who knew?
I love fabulous colors and sunset themed rooms.
Yes, and your headband matches.
Oh, what does that sign say? Oh, what is that? Hang on.
We are not. It's a goodbye.
Oh,
Well, we'll just use the phone then.
We're getting a new
See,
camera.
I'm in the middle of an eBay camera battle right now, so we'll find out in 3 days.
Are you bidding with somebody? Is
Yeah,
that what's happening?
I lost one already, but the second one I'm like, yeah, it's got like a few days left, but
Well, I'm sending
it's
you.
nice though. It's got like unlimited recording and it's got like the cinematic
Yeah.
autofocus and all this shit. But
Are we all still in the
We're
frame
geeking out.
on your phone over
yeah,
there? Nice.
oh, cool.
Is it recording for sure?
it is, but it's not. Yeah, I can see it in the mirror actually.
Oh, sweet.
Hey, there we are.
There we are.
Good that we put that up.
See?
It's like a screen of a screen.
Vanity has
Sick.
its place, you know? It's right on.
Okay, it's a square.
It's a square. We're squaring. So, my love, on the board today, today's holy
Menu.
menu. On today's holy menu, it is rituals. And all things ritual.
Yes, and I'm so glad.
The perfect guest.
Yes.
I feel like it was synchronicity because I have been meditating on this concept in my life recently. The past few weeks, I've just been thinking about belief systems and how they tie into our rituals, right?
Yes. Or the source of our rituals also.
Yes, and it's like
Yeah.
there's a ritual for me, I think, is the bridge between the unseen and the seen. You know?
Okay.
Right.
Can you
It's
expound
like
upon
conscious
that?
and subconscious.
Yes. Like, so in an astrological sense, right?
This is what we've
There
been waiting
are-
for.
There are different axi that talk about the oppositions that we go through in our lives, right? And
Yes.
so for me, one of my transits right now, Pluto is in the first decan of my 12th house. And so it's really influencing me to think about what what belief systems have been having power over me. And
Ooh, good questions.
Can you explain what the deacon and 12th house
Oh,
means
yeah,
just
yeah,
for
for sure,
the
for sure.
layman's? Just what is it?
So in each house on an astrological chart, I study Western astrology, so it's a circle, and there are 12 different houses, and so that would mean that the first house is in an axis with the 7th house, and so the 12th house for me represents the collective consciousness, if you will, which can represent
yes.
spirituality to some people. It could represent your connection to the cosmos, to something greater than yourself in such a way that is unseen.
Is that also cultural, or could that be cultural?
Yeah, definitely. It can definitely tie into, I think, maybe the 12th house almost transcends culture in a way. Whereas the 9th house would represent more of culture. That's more of like, you get into philosophy, theology, religions.
Yeah. What's the transcendence of culture, do you think?
That is a very good question.
like
Because I
it.
think everyone feels it differently.
What's above culture?
Because
Humanity?
for me, it's almost just this feeling of being in a cosmic goop.
Yes. Yes.
The goop.
The goop.
The goopity goop.
Goop. Sanjay Gupta. my
That
favorite.
good mud. Yeah.
And I mean, it's said that, people with heavy 12th houses are able to perceive the unseen. Could it be energies or spirits or...
Is anything beyond our 5 senses? That
Is it just extra sensual?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
it's amplified, it's just us amplified probably too.
Yeah, being able to see the subtle, to perceive the subtle realms.
The subtle realms. That's where I like to roam.
like
And
that.
so moving forward, that's what the 12th house represents for me, right? It's like my connection to source, and a lot of
Okay.
astrologers would say a connection to God, if you will.
Yes.
And so the opposite on that axis is the 6th house, which is essentially your habitual, everyday
Rituals.
ritual that you would go through.
Micro rituals.
Micro rituals. That's what
your-
we were talking about.
The work that you do every day, your health routine, your the foods that you like to
Yes.
partake in.
See, these are my rituals. Our personal rituals. Are very personal rituals between me and the sacred. And then everything I find sacred in my day. Like I just changed out my sourdough
Yes.
starter,
That was
which
the word
is
I
my
was going to say was the sacred.
yeah,
Which
it's
one
the
is personal?
sacred. Yeah, and it's what's personally sacred to you and spiritual to you, and you create a ritual practice of your life. That I create a ritual practice of my life. That's what it is.
Yes.
And I try to get deeper into that ritual practice every day. So
What do
I
we
started the ferments
Mhm.
again this
What are we
week.
practicing for? Is it death? Is that the final? Is that
That's a great
Is that
question.
the
Women
final,
practice for death monthly. We
shindig?
go through death, life, death cycle every
True.
28 days or so, right? To 32,
That
35.
shedding.
We go through this cycle. So we're very in tune with death. I think maybe men need to be more in tune with death in a healthy manner.
Dude,
so
I got a
maybe that
skull.
would end war.
I have a skull right here, dude.
Well, I do know that
I'm very in touch with death.
you know,
when I speak of men, I don't speak.
I'm
of you,
hardcore,
darling.
dude.
I have
Clearly.
heard, speaking of hardcore dudes, I've been hearing a lot about the Sundance ritual becoming more alive in younger culture, younger
Yes,
generations.
that's such a healthy masculine
What's the ritual?
energy.
Dancing at sunset?
You know, I wish I knew more about it, but from my understanding, they partake in this ceremony. It's a multi-day ceremony where they're out in the sun and they just push themselves to the limit.
Yeah.
And a lot of people view it as a brutal experience. And it's
Yeah, but why is that brutal experience inherently bad? I mean, because the
Yeah.
brutality is what gets us to another level of
yeah,
I'd hate to
a
say
lot of them
enlightenment, but yeah.
a lot of them see it as an ode to women and the shedding that they go through every month. And so once a year,
By maxing themselves out, yeah, that's the ode.
yeah.
Well, in some of these
to the
rituals,
woman.
like
I love that.
showing that the man, like I'm trying to remember what this one group did. I think it was like in India actually, but they would like nail, like the poor people would put all these nail piercings, all like up to 400 on their body. Some people just do their tongue, so you're not supposed to talk. And then like the richer people had like these bigger kind of like caravans that they were sacrificing to the god. But then it showed, but you know, the people doing the study asked the like women when they're like dating, showing these men, and like the fact that they did the ritual like do the hard way, like it had like social value to them, because like it made them show value or character. But
Are they like the European equivalent of like the ascetics?
kind of, dude. It
Right?
was
Like
it was
the-
fucking crazy what some of these people are doing. But and then they're like,
Like the
then they
Brodies?
climb a
Yeah.
mountain on this like fucking hot ass black rocks, and then like barefoot and
I do love personal feats like this. Like I've told B, I want to walk across coals before I die.
that leads me to my next one.
I do, and I want to lay on a bed of nails, and I want to do some real like bodhisattva shit.
I think there's something to it.
I do.
When the book I was listening to, they were talking about there's this fire walking ceremony in Spain. It was like some island in Spain somewhere, a village, and they would every year, like they would ask them the whole year, like, oh, I look forward to this. This is like one of the most important days of my life. And they're like, really, why? And they're like I don't know, I don't know, but and then so they go to it, and there's like this guy who's 76, been doing it since he was a kid, and he was like the doctor said not to do it because it might raise his heart rate too much and it might be bad for his heart. And then he asked the doctor, but he's like, what will happen to my heart if I don't do it? And like, and then he was at the thing, and everyone, and it was crazy because they put all these heart rate monitors on everyone. And when people were doing the fire walk, they said they felt so calm and at ease, but their heart rate was like, it was like at like 200 beats per minute for one guy. And then, but everyone in the whole group, like when somebody was walking, their heart rates all matched and their pulses all matched because they're all focused on the person there. And then the people during it, they all say like, oh, I go, you know, you kind of go to like not be in yourself. It's like to join the group. And then they found all that data afterwards. They're
group.
like, oh, everyone's
Yes.
literally synced up to this like intense moment. And
Precisely.
so I don't know. So they're talking about just all the social bonding that rituals can provide for people. And
This
which I
is
think
why
we
mentality
missed
is so
that out.
important.
We need that in our society because
Right.
like when you do shit together, people, you're like, oh, I know him. I know what he's like went through or is capable of.
Exactly.
Like,
but
you've seen
whenever we
his
have
heart,
these
but-
meditative practices where thousands and thousands, if not millions of us are all focused on the same awareness at once, we raise the resonant levels of the earthen energy, of global energy,
That's true.
right? So
vibration.
exactly.
That's
That's
why
what
I
I'm
think-
saying. It's all about mentality. So I'd love to get everybody within, you know, right? A bigger meditation, a bigger sort of vibe where we can transmute these moments and really see our power so that we can start to believe in the power of our change as a collective. Just saying.
How can we
Yes,
do that?
yes.
I wonder if there was like big asteroids or something back in the day, some type of meteor shower where like everyone in the world could see it.
But we
if that
all
would
used
be
to
a
meditate on
signal.
cosmic phenomena, right? We all used to meditate on that. Like, oh, this is when this big alignment is coming. Like Roshni's been talking about, the alignments affect our energies.
Yeah, and I mean, coming back to that, you know what I was saying before, it's like when you think about these axi and like what is the bridge between these two opposites in our lives, between the seen and the unseen. And I think what y'all are talking
Right.
about is this cosmic connectedness in vibration that we all are, that we just, you know, a
Yes.
lot of us can't see it, and so we think that it's not there.
And where the bridge is to that.
But it's like the people that we are around, we sync up with those vibrations, and if you think about it, it starts to weave into your everyday life.
Yes.
The little habitual things that you start to do. And so it's like,
Are you saying that plays into ritual in some way, into our daily ritual, the influence? of
yes.
others?
And I think something that I've been really contemplating on is, what are my habits? What are the rituals that I do every day? A lot of us don't really take that into perspective unless we're actively doing some kind of, you know, like CBT, you know, like cognitive
you mean,
behavioral
like,
therapy, you
the
know?
subconscious rituals that you perform every day to become more cognizant of those and then analyze them?
Yes, for instance, you know, I was talking to my partner a couple weeks ago about how I really feel like I need to put more intention into the ritual in my life. And he was like, you know, I don't really think of myself as a ritualistic person. And I was like, what? I was like, you light your candles and dim your lights every time you sit down to play video games. Like, that is the
So
biggest
ritual.
ritual that I've ever seen. Like,
So ritual.
Going into the the dungeon, you're literally going to another realm. So
he's like doing like
Yeah.
battle ritual mode.
it's so cute. I love it. And
He's like, I'm not
also-
a ritualistic person at all.
and also, you know, like when people are, you know, waking up, taking their shower, cleansing themselves before they have to go out into the world and go to work.
These are personal rituals. This is what I was
Yes.
speaking about earlier. Is everything I do,
Exactly.
but also it's at a next level, because when I get up, there are 30 things I do before I even get out of bed
Yes.
that are ritual to me.
What's your first, like, what do you, like, process your dreams or something? Or
I process dreams.
Assess your bladder? Or
I
My
process
favorite.
dreams. I assess bladder, see if it can wait or if I can continue processing, or if my body needs attention right now.
yeah, my physical form.
I'm like, because my brain is going off. So then, yeah, we do dream ritual,
Yeah.
and then we do breath ritual. I bring myself back into my body with breath. And then I give gratitude prayer, of course. I do gratitude assessment. And then I assess my list for the day, like my to-do list. And I give my little prayer for the day of how, you know, the energy I'd like to, the day to embody and to hold over the day. And then I read a little or a lot, sometimes a lot. And then I stretch. And then I get out of bed. Oh, and then I brush my tongue. I drink lemon water, and then, you know,
Yeah.
I poop.
Those daily rituals.
Yeah.
We all do them. We're all ritualistic people, and I think that's something that I don't know, maybe could disconnect us from each other when we don't put that intention of like, this is my ritual. And I've been, like I was saying earlier, like I've been thinking about in myself, like how do my rituals reflect my spiritual values?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Good questions to ask.
You know, and I feel like that is the bridge between the 6th and the 12th house in astrology.
Okay, so that's the mirror realm of the 6th and the 12th house then. Like.
Would be ritual. It's, yeah.
So taking onus of one's rituals and being more cognizant in our daily practices, bringing us just back to being fully present and in the moment, right? Being mindful living, essentially. Mindful
Yeah.
being, but paying more attention to our rituals, our subconscious rituals.
Yeah. And I mean, that could translate into like, what's the energy that you're bringing into a room?
Oh, I'm very cognizant
You know?
of that. Yes.
Yeah.
Especially as a hostess, especially as an entertainer. And you as an entertainer as well. Knowing that
and us
we
as
have
mothers.
to be, and us as mothers, we have to be very cognizant of the energy from which we come into the room with. And just as women, honestly, as wumas, because our energy shifts a room no matter which woman it is. Women shift the room. That's what we do. And it's a powerful, gorgeous energy that I absolutely adore. I love you being in our love shack today. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
What a wonderful, spontaneous
Amazing.
thing this is. I just want to give gratitude to that real quick.
This is
Because
like
that
the
is a
opposite
ritual
of
of
a
mine.
Oh, but this is like the opposite of one. It's
This
like
is another
spontaneous.
ritual of mine. And I started realizing whenever B brought up, he said, hey, listen, I kind of want just like a direct theme of the episode. Would it be okay if we did rituals sometime soon? I was like, cool, let's just do that next episode. So it's made me cognizant, like you were speaking of my personal rituals and what I consider ritual, not being a religious person. And then also on an anthropological level, of worldly ritual and ritual practices from all around the world. So I went and I rented all these books to learn about
there's
some
so
of
much.
these. There's so much. Ritual is steeped in everything we do every day, in everything we are. And so the psychological implications of that, right? Okay, girl.
This is a juicy bit.
So the juicy bit is, so what I wanted to get in and ask you was, especially since you're like fresh into the psychology practice, right? But I love me some psychoanalysis. So I'm like, the question is, I suppose, what is your take on ritual practice as far as what ritual practice is there for? What is the meaning and purpose of ritual practice for us, do you feel, from a comfort mind standpoint, a root brain standpoint, from a higher self standpoint, just anything as far as a sapio cerebral level?
I mean, it's the old saying, really, like, we are creatures of habit. I definitely feel like, obviously, it definitely plays a huge role in our reward systems, right?
All right, so dopamine hits, we got those.
Yeah, and they say that, the strongest impact of that dopamine response is from something that you expect to happen.
Ooh.
Right? Like, you are anticipating this result to happen.
So do we need to let go of more like expectation, create more space for like the law of detachment in that, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a balance, right? Like, we need comfort. We need comfort to function. We can't just, like, expect chaos at all times. And
what if we were raised that way?
yeah, and then
Then you
expect
have
to be
things like
okay
me.
in the long run. Like, there's gonna be some things that
Yeah.
it can be traumatizing, right? And so it's really important that we have these rituals to bring us comfort.
Because
but
it brings safety, right? That's what I was
Yeah,
thinking. There's
yeah.
safety in ritual. And that's why
Exactly.
a lot of ritualistic religions that are of an organized state of being are pretty impactful on the world, because there is this safety.
Yeah, and that's an extreme, right? Like, it can get to an extreme. And so there is this point where you have to break away from that and kind of rewire some things and be like, wait a second, is this the pathway, like the neural pathway that I want to, be this strong inside of me, to where
Yes.
it's like, I'm doing this so habitually, so animalistically, like, that's a part of bringing that mindfulness and being like, wait, I can hack that part of me, and I can create new habits and new rituals that reflect me as I evolve. And at that point, you have to step back from that and create a little chaos in your life.
Yeah. So you don't become dogmatic with your rituals either. Is that
Yeah, definitely.
the thing as well? Yeah, I would say so too.
Yeah, I feel like you're kind of like laying the groundwork, and then you're like, I don't need to go exactly where it goes, but I'm going like that direction, and then like, chaos, magic, nature will take its course of which way I fall. But
It's kind of like that on the farm, because there's definite chores and responsibilities that we have every day. But
Yes.
sometimes we can, an hour here we can sleep in, an hour there where they can wait for, some snacks. Like not having snacks ain't gonna kill you, And it's kind of like, it kind of helps my sourdough and my ferments in a little bit of a way, because it helps them grow a little bit longer. I'm not, messing or fussing over them all the time. And then we have a more natural clock.
not as coddled, huh?
I like having a natural clock. That's kind of my ritual too every day, is to purposefully not have a schedule.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much.
Yeah, there's an art to it.
There's an art to that. I like the way you say that.
But y'all talking about someone was talking about like ritual might be like where we came from in terms of like when like medicine men or shaman people would do you know, anything they do, there's always a ritual aspect to it, and also like the physical medicine. But so but for people who like believe the placebo more, obviously you're gonna have better results. So the ones who did believe all that, and like, you know, those are more likely to reproduce because they like survive. So so I think there's something in this that like ritual has like a purpose and like a power to it. And then we're talking about like how OCD is like, someone saying that's like might be an extension of that, because like OCD is very, very ritualistic. Like I have to open this door 3 times before I enter, and I gotta like shut this or something. And then, so it's almost, I was thinking, I feel like that's
control.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like trying to hijack the control of the ritual, and you're like, but to this like obsessive part. But
I mean, but that's what ritual is, right? It gives us a sense of control.
Yeah.
And I mean,
like you did
but
your
what
part.
if you're in a ritual flow? Because that's more what I'm speaking to as a personal practice, is like a ritual flow. Right? So it's
almost bridging that gap between letting go and holding on. Right?
Yes, and that's a constant practice in itself. So
between structure and chaos.
Yes, that's my life, girl. Yes, this is my life's work.
Yeah, I'm fascinated where one ends and one begins, like kind of like when you like a waking state and dreaming state, like the hypnagogic. I'm like, oh, that's where it's really interesting, because you kind of have like a foot in both, but it's
and
like
that's that theta brain, and that's where we're most creative, and that's where we're most absorbent, is because that's where our brains were when we were children, was in that theta state, right? And that is the flow state, and that's why we're not there all the time, because, you know, we're not always absorbing. But it's said that if we stay in a state of gratitude, and this is what I feel for myself, that we're more in that state more often, and it's more readily available for us to just tap into the more we practice the ritual of gratitude. So I do feel that like gratitude is a ritual in itself as well.
True.
Yes. And I mean, there are so many different cultural rituals that, for instance, like kirtan, like when we're chanting prayers, it creates this theta brain wave state in us.
Yes. I used to cater back when I did vegan catering, when we were still in Plano in the suburbs, when we were trying the suburbs on for a couple of years. That was wild. There was a kirtan pop-up that I used to work with, just a little segue real quick, at the vegan pop-up market downtown. And I used to cater everyone's events. And I catered a kirtan concert.
Oh my God, amazing.
Ritual. A ritual.
It's just such a beautiful thing to witness.
It's a gorgeous ritual that you enter into just with your own energy, just being there. That's why I love circles like this, dance circles, right? Conversation circles. And, you know, we ate all this gorgeous food, the menu they picked, and everyone got to try the instruments. I don't know, it's just really gorgeous. And it was a ritual. It was definitely ritualistic, the way that they performed the event. Okay, so that's another thing. So there's ritual in everything, right? Another instance, our open mics.
Going to a concert,
or just going to a concert. Yep. Everything is ritual.
Everyone dresses up. You go to this thing and get altered.
In the mainstream world,
I don't. People who say
football, sports are ritual. Like it's what do you?
Oh no, just like for people who say they don't do rituals, like when people who like anyone who says they knock on wood or they
that too.
I don't know, blow on dice or like what is some other shit people do? That
The little superstitions.
So I
Yeah,
have this.
like that.
Thank you. This dictionary of superstitions here. This is what I rented
Nice.
from the library, and I picked some randoms, but also some other stuff we really wanted to speak on because
Yes.
we grow hawthorn. And hawthorn gets a really bad rap, especially in like witchy circles or really religious circles. Anywhere where ritual is very strong. Hawthorn is kind of seen as like a devil's plant. A lot of people see the crown of thorns, that they were a thorn, a crown that incorporated hawthorn. And, you know, like
Interesting.
Christ's crown of thorns,
Yeah.
and that ain't good. So, you know, and then there's a bunch of other stuff about hawthorn in this book. I wanted to read just real quick, if we could do a quick segue,
Yeah, let's do it.
just about ritual.
Yeah, I'll drink some water.
Yay. So, sometimes it's called the May blossom, and on the positive side of things, it's really beautiful because they actually represent. Hawthorn represents the major tree that they use at the Mayflower or like May ritual. What is that called again?
Mayday?
May Day. All right, so
Which I
With
think
the
is-
pole where they
it's the
walk
pole.
around.
I think
And
it's
with
the only holiday
ribbons.
America doesn't celebrate that the whole world does. 'Cause I
the
think it's
whole
about, isn't it
world
about, like,
celebrates their
workers or-
own version of. I was just about to
Isn't it
say.
about like workers or people or something?
Yes.
And
Well,
we're like,
no,
yeah,
it's
we
about
don't do that
spring.
here.
It's kind of it's about spring celebration, and it's also the first day that the hawthorn blooms, and it blooms to the world. So, but then they changed that date, May Day. They changed it.
No, they
to,
changed
like,
the calendars. They
They changed the calendar, so it
more
changed the
months.
date.
Okay.
So now the tree blooms late, but they still hold the calendar. And I was like, why not just follow the tree? Like the date should be when the tree does its beautiful thing, right? But you know, that's ritual. Okay, so that's ritual. So anyway, this hawthorn, we just transplanted it from the back of our land to this new guild that we just created that you saw earlier on the
Okay.
big mound.
Yeah.
And we're incorporating like a gorgeous pomegranate tree, a chaste berry tree. We have lavender and all sorts of seeds going on out there. Anyway, so hawthorn is used in black magic rituals intended to bring pain to some unwitting victim. The thorns being pressed into the heart of a sheep or a bat. And then, oh yeah, I wrote a note here for myself that said, talk to the fairies first before we move the hawthorn and request permission, because that's what it says in the book. That, yeah, if you choose to
Tabby Poe.
alter a hawthorn in any way, you first need to consult the fairies, okay? Because they love the hawthorn tree.
You don't want to fuck with the fae.
Don't fuck with the fae.
Don't fuck with the
Don't
fae.
do it, I'm telling you. Don't mess with us. We got a whole hierarchy you're not even sure of, so don't mess with us. So anyway, there was lots of goodness about ritual and hawthorn. But the whole... It's amazing what humans will lead themselves to believe in the name of ritual, too, okay? Because that whole...
placebo.
The placebo, thank
The
you.
placebo is life.
It is life. It is so ironic. It's the most ironic thing.
It's, yeah.
If
And the
irony should be
nocebo.
under
Nocebo
the
is
definition. Yeah, like that should be the definition of irony is placebo. The placebo effect, because it is, isn't it?
I have this note about for if people don't think rituals are important or have value, like for us, like weddings, when people get married, like it's not about the fucking paperwork you fill out. It's about the ceremony and like the expression of the love and the intent into the ritual, not like
The ritual.
no one goes to a wedding and is like, hey, how'd the filing of the paperwork go? They're like, no, like how was the fucking ritual, the event?
Yeah.
I don't know,
Everything's ritual. I feel like
The same
birds
with
should be
death.
brought into ritual more.
Death, there's a lot of ritual into that, and same thing. I had some about they have birds in here. Oh, you're talking about animals though, but I was in this book. They were talking about this woman. She was like, I think she was in like, I don't remember if she was in Asia or Africa, but she was in this field, and like there was all these elephants, and she got scared, so she just pretended she was sleeping like by this tree, and the elephants were checking her out. And then, assuming that she was dead, they started gathering sticks and like trying to, not burying her, but like putting a little structure over her. And the lady said she was so scared to move, so she just stayed there. And then they just fucking built this little altar for her. I'm like, that's amazing.
Aww,
And then,
Wow.
that's so cute.
and there's
Like,
one.
here you
There's
go, dead lady.
Yeah, I mean, there's one story about there was an elephant that kept breaking into like the government's like land, and they're like eating the garden or some shit. And then so like they shot it, and then they fed the meat to the villagers, and they left the bones. It was like a mile away, but they left the bones there. And then the elephants found the bones, and they brought it back to the spot where the elephant died. And like, cause like I guess they're like, I'm trying to think what an elephant would think, but they're like, oh, I think Lenny belongs here. This is where he died, and these are his bones. But they're like, I don't know. So it's cool thinking of that they have like some concept of death. And I know I've heard Neanderthals like they used to like bury their dead with like with shit and like flowers on their head and everything.
We
and,
all have death rituals, and we all have birth rituals.
yeah, even animals, man. Like another one was like they're talking about flamingos that would fly to this island in the middle of nowhere. And like they're talking about ritual as a mating device, and they do dances and shit there, and like flick their necks back, and then like then they get like a mate for life, and they kind of like just take off with that person. So there's like this big significance to that.
Yeah, that's what you and I did, that rain dance for our first date on our 9-hour hike.
Yeah, oh my
Been
gosh,
hooked
it
ever
was
since.
so cute to hear about that in one of your episodes.
I forgot we talked about
It was
that.
adorable. I was like, that's how they met.
Yeah, that's how we physically met.
Wow.
Yeah. But we met over art, which is really
amazing.
gorgeous.
I know we're doing a podcast, but I forget that this people listen, or it actually goes out to the world. So it's one
Yeah.
thing we talk about shit. I'm like, oh yeah, like, but
Yeah.
it's good to hear.
I love it. It's
I
raw.
like the feedback. Yeah. Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you for loving our rawness. I love
Of
our
course.
rawness too. I do. I cherish it. Thank you for being raw with us today.
Yes.
Oh, one last thing on my. Well, we don't have to wrap up, but one of my favorite rituals I heard was there was this. I think it was this Zulu. Or it's an Aboriginal group where the way they greet each other is they'd hold each other's penises and like in trust of each other. It shows trust and bonding. But yeah, because if you're a guy, you're like, yeah, he could rip my penis off, I could rip his off, but we'll be cool. But
See, this is how men think. This is what I was saying. So
hey, we're not like monkeys. There's a.
it's not hard,
There are
right? Like
we're not that far
they-
from baboons, because there are some baboons that they called it a scrotum grab, and they'd just hold each other's nuts as they greet each other. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. I'm like,
they trust build by
we
holding
shake
each other's
hands,
nuts.
right?
I mean,
Like,
dogs just smell each other, and they're like, what's going on down there? I want the truth, not what you're barking at. Like, your ass don't lie.
I don't know. My brain is so funny. I just think about women like hugging each other and just rubbing our boobs against each other.
yeah.
And that being like a trust building exercise.
Oh.
But I don't automatically think that women would do that. But men will go up and actively like rub each other's scrotum in order to trust
Well,
bond.
it's not too common, but there are. What are those?
What do we do as women that trust bonds?
What are those other, not chimps, but bonobos? They do that. They'll do female genital rubbing. Like they like
That's true.
like
They
just
scissor.
each other.
Yeah, but bonobos are higher intelligent
They're
beings.
very sex orientated, but
I really appreciate bonobos a lot.
I wonder, do you think they
I think-
ritualize their sex, or are
I
they
think
just like,
I'm a bonobo. Yeah. As far as species go, I'm a bonobo all the way.
yeah, you're more sex over violence for sure. Which
Yeah. Why
we live in a
can't we
chimp
settle
society
things?
because every movie's
Right.
got someone's head being blown off, but they blur out the sex parts. But
Okay, so my dad used to always hold his hands over my eyes. Every night he would wheel out his TV from the closet because we didn't own television, but we'd watch a dude movie naturally, and so we'd sit and there would be, her tits are out, and my dad would just immediately like slap my face with his hands.
Yeah.
And
Same.
But he's like, I come in peace, you go in pieces. And he like blows this dude's head apart, and that's fine.
I want to put the clip right here.
A little
whatever that is.
8-year-old girl could see that, but she can't see 3 titties, like, come on.
Yeah.
That's the worst
Yeah.
thing.
I'm like, I have boobs. I just
Yeah,
don't
and
get it.
I honestly think that is the mindset that happens when we erase the ritual from sex.
Thank you. And when we erase sex
Yeah.
from
It's
the
just-
ritual
it's just
of anything.
It's commodified.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I mean, like what you're talking about, like sex isn't just the act of sex.
It's
Almost,
not
we are
just
sexual
intercourse.
beings.
It is
We
sexual
are
energy.
creative beings.
Exactly. We are creator gods, and joy in itself is sexual energy.
Yeah, would y'all
it
say-
does not need intercourse.
Would y'all say, yeah, sex starts before penetration? It's
Oh,
like
sex is in everything. Everything we create. Like, it doesn't have to be just intercourse, and we have denigrated it to just intercourse when sexual
Yeah.
being and sexual energy and sexual aliveness is our entire being.
Yeah, and
It's everything.
What kind of energy are you bringing to it? You know, like,
Yes.
are you mindful? Are you mindful as
Yeah.
you're having sex? Are you mindful as you're masturbating? Like,
What are your sexual rituals? Exactly.
And
are you being
also-
ritualistic in your practice?
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about it, like what we were talking
yeah.
about, you know, with dopamine, like we get that dopamine rush during orgasm. Well, why not? Why not question? Like, why not?
But it's not
think
just
that it's
dopamine
like-
during sex, though, or orgasm. It's
Yeah.
also oxytocin. It's also endorphins. It's like,
And like,
it's
what
this
else are you getting
beautiful-
those things from? Like,
yeah.
I've definitely orgasmed from having a really good workout.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. Or playing with flowers.
Serious, like,
Yeah.
definitely.
Dude,
in
a
the gym, or like,
workout?
is this like, are you like,
Oh,
Or like
yeah.
going on a really good run, or
like-
Ooh,
you know,
well,
a
you
really
get
good
that
yoga
endorphin
session.
high.
Yeah,
runner's highs? And
Runner's highs.
I don't
Exactly.
think I've ran a shitload of my life. I don't know if I've ever gotten
or just
that before,
power
but-
lifted, and you're just like, oh my god,
Oh
that
yeah,
was
you
so
do a
good.
deep squat with 4 plates,
I
and you're
guess
like,
so, yeah.
yes. I am in my goddess energy right now. I am totally rooted.
Yeah,
Fucking lit.
and I think that feeling of ecstaticness,
It's ecstaticism. Yeah.
and like, how can I weave that sense of pleasure and beingness inside of the everyday
so
rituals?
why isn't prayer and sexual energy synonymous? Because that's what prayer
Yes.
is, girl.
Yes.
Is that ecstaticism. So if we're
I think you say that's what sex is, girl. It's heavenly.
it is too.
I
It's
mean,
ecstaticism in its own
They're
right.
both-
I mean, like
they're both
any devotionals.
vehicles.
But
Yes,
they're about
devotion.
devotion. It's devotion.
Devotion.
And it's devotionals.
Right, yeah, because there's something
Yeah.
with nuns and priests not being able to have sex. Like, there's like I feel like they're like, yeah, you got to devote.
I mean, we know what
Whatever
happened
to-
there. I'm just kidding.
We know who they
I'm
take
just
that out on.
saying, you need to love yourself holistically and everything about you, including your sexuality, because that is where we come from and where we go and who we are and who we be. And it's not in this, I'm not speaking in some modern canned sense of sexuality either. I'm talking about the whole enchilada.
Oh, this-
Yeah, I
this-
mean, okay, going back to psychology and psychoanalysis, I mean, this is a point where a lot of people don't know this, but Carl Jung was a student of Freud.
Yes.
And, you know, Freud had this very just deeply rooted sexual view, like very physical, you know, very
yeah. Very Victorian.
very mom fucker, if I will.
oh my goodness, a little bit of Oedipus going on there, right?
Some Oedipus vibes.
And so Jung, with his upbringing, very close to the parapsychological, the unseen, he
Para.
and all of his experience in anthropology before he became a psychoanalysis. He had so much experience, rich experiences with other cultures and their rituals and their spiritualities. And he personally came to believe that, you know, libido isn't just about physical sex. Libido is creation energy.
Thank you, Creator God energy. There it is right there.
It's prana, you know?
It's prana.
It's a
It's the
life
good
force.
shit.
Chi.
It's all this we're creating
Yes.
right now.
It
yes.
has like an actual like functional aspect to your body. It's not just
Yes.
some secondary reproducing thing, but I feel like there's actual like health.
Well, there is the
Parts to it.
biological level of the human. We can't deny that.
Yeah.
But just like all the systems of your body and just like all the systems of the earth, just like all the systems of anything, it's all holistic. So yeah, of course we can't deny the biological, but we can't amplify and only accentuate the biological aspects. We have to incorporate the multifaceted nature of humanness. right? Especially whenever it comes to sexuality. So why would we pigeonhole sexuality as being one-dimensional, as just being this root intercourse, when really there's, you know, just like there's the levels of the chakras of the earth, there's the levels of the chakras of sexuality to me as well, right? There's, I mean, I'm very sapiosexual too. So, you know, there's, I mean, it's, what turns you on in life, you guys?
Basically,
everything that turns you on is sexual. Everything that lights
your
you
rituals
up,
turning you on? Like,
yes.
Arousal, not
and
just
Are your rituals turning you on?
Like, you have the power to.
You have the power to either embrace the rituals that turn you on or start new ones that turn you on. If it doesn't turn you up, turn you on, turn you out, what are you even doing?
Well, I think the word we're looking for is arousal, but that not just sexual
It's beyond
arousal. Something that gets
arousal.
your every other aspect of your dimensional self.
Yeah,
that
and
gets
I mean, if we're
aroused and
talking
sparked up
about
and-
people's everyday
Yes.
rituals, realistically, like, a lot of us are, you know, grinding in the 9 to 5, like waking up, doing that ritual, and you know, like they're not turned on every day, and it definitely, I feel like, reflects in the physical libido. How creative can you be when your mind is being taken up by all these rituals that don't turn you on?
That's how I feel about school too. That's why I unschool my children, because they get to fill up their own body, their vessel, their mind, all of their coffers with everything that they want to fill themselves up with.
What brings you passion?
Right. And then we could, because we're parents, we get to sprinkle in our own stuff in there too. But
Well, it's
it's
like when you're
only
a kid-
food for thought. If they don't like it, then they don't have to adhere to that. It's not like we have some dogmatic way of being. Like,
Well, they tell
the
you when you're a
girls are
kid,
much different than us.
what career do you want to be? And they give you a list of options, and it's
Right,
like,
exactly.
This is all I get to choose from. I'm like, versus like,
What do you want to be? But these
Yeah,
are
like,
your options.
versus-
Yeah, firefighter, vet,
Nurse,
doctor,
daycare worker,
lawyer.
dog
Maid.
walker.
It's like there's so
Wife.
much more to
Wife,
life
yeah.
than that, and it's insane to
How about
me that
professional
we.
podcaster?
Yeah. What about a instead of narrowing it down to being a vet, why not swim with the whales?
Dolphins.
Yeah.
Whales.
And observe their song.
Girl,
you know,
we were just watching
Like-
this documentary last night
Yeah.
about this couple that reminded us of us
It was either
because we
called
go our
Fire of
own
Love
way.
or Love of Fire. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's called the Fire of Love or Fire of Love, and it's about a French
Awesome
couple who are volcanologists, and they travel the world following live volcanoes their entire lives,
Yes.
Active
and then they
volcano.
die by active volcano.
Well, I think they were filmmakers. I feel like more than they were
But, you know,
volcanologists. They had
incredible
amazing.
footage.
you
It was
can't
his
live that kind of
footage, her
life if
photography.
you're spending every day
Yeah.
in school.
But it's just like
Yeah.
our
In
life
public school.
here. You can't live this lifestyle that we got going on.
That's true.
Unless you are truly free.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to say it isn't a lot of work, but it's my work.
Well, they
It's
say
our
like
work.
hunter-gatherers work. They don't even work. It's what
Because
Yeah.
that ritual turns you on.
It turns me on.
what they call hunter-gatherer work is what we vacation to do. We go vacation to hunt and fish and shit. But,
Yeah, but we do
they,
that here.
They do it like 20 hours a week on average to survive. But we do like 40 just to do something and then
Yeah.
take care of ourselves. But
Right, but we're not
Definitely.
even right. Whenever your life is ensnared by making money for somebody else, instead of, I mean, like if you took those hours and you put them
not as direct.
on yourself, on your own direct work,
Direct experience.
same amount of hours, direct work on yourself, and you did some part-time shit on the side to support that full time. You make something, whatever you want to make yourself into, within 3 months. You can do that. I went into an entrepreneurial space, you guys. Thank you for going with me. I'm just saying.
That was great.
You can do it.
Well, no, when you think about just
It is so
someone who has a
possible.
monotonous
Yeah.
job, like how many hours you're doing something. Like, dude, if I
Yeah.
did this for myself or something, like I could like
Exactly.
easily be doing that. But
Like I'm about to go out in the
depends if you
woods
wanna- it's commitment is really the
and take
main
some
issue.
fanciful naked photos, and hopefully that something comes of that. It's going to be fun. Maybe you want to join me and we can be fanciful and
yeah.
fairies in the forest together.
You can join us on our OnlyFans.
Hey, this is Patreon content. You guys.
No, but something that got me thinking about ritual, about what you were talking about, you know,
Cut you out.
is something that turns you on, something that you feel devoted to. I mean, everything that you do, there is some kind of sacrifice. You know, if you're not doing this, you're doing
Yes.
this. And so that has a lot to do with ritual and creating the life that you want to create. Is what are you willingly sacrificing that you're like, you know what? That's actually okay with me to sacrifice this because this turns me on so much.
That's
Yeah.
such a good acknowledgement, because you have to plug that time back into your practice of working on your new business, because it's like, where are you willing to put your energy? Like you just said, where are you willing to put it? Where do you already put it where you might be wasting time, or where you're wasting focus and energy?
Well, that reminds
and
me of
it could be going towards your actual ritual practice that you want to be ritualizing every day and ritualizing your life.
Well, that reminds me of that Jesus parable about, I think he comes across like a couple businessmen and they're like, oh man, I want to be like you. You have like no you know, you got to care for your life and no possessions. And they're like, what can we do? How can you teach us? And he's like, I can teach you. You just got to drop everything you have and come with me. And then they're like,
Yeah.
nah,
Because
nah, dude.
obviously
We can't.
that's the way he rolls.
I'm too committed. I'm too in this. Like I can't. Like I can idealize with, you know, that kind of lifestyle, but they're like, nah, man, I'm too committed. It was only
Yeah,
it's nice to think
exactly.
about, but
Women are like, oh my God, I love your life. I'd love to live this way. And I'm like, okay, do you take hot showers every day? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, would you be willing to give that up? Would you be willing to give up actually shampooing your hair more than twice a month? Would you be willing to wash your hair with eggs? Would you be willing to, you know, make your own vinegar and attempt to make your own sourdough bread?
And I mean, a lot of mornings I know are so dedicated to the animals.
Animals and
it's the main reason why I get up out of bed, because I'm like, the sun's up, I gotta let the fucking birds out, and
it's
I'm like,
animals and life cultures is devoted every rising, and plants, like, yeah, but that's part of the rising, is like you get excited about getting up and getting out of bed to do these things. I'm not dreading going to work. My work is my life, and my life is fucking amazing. I love getting up to do this, and I love that my man, you know, right now is earning a living for us in the outside world in order for me to maintain this here. And then he comes home and he gardens with me, and we have all these hours together. It's like date night in the garden, and we're transplanting plants, and we're plotting, and we're planting seeds, and we're barefoot in the dirt together.
springtime
Planting
activities.
seeds.
We're planting
you know?
seeds, and we're caring for fruit trees, and we're caring for animals, and
these
are our rituals every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything you do throughout your day is watering seeds.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Which are symbolic
the
for like
children, the
future
people.
and
Yeah.
hope
Yeah.
and
You know, like and now to think about it, you know, at using that as a symbol, you know, symbols are the way that
Symbols.
we bring the imagination into life.
It's also
You know,
how
the
we
cosmos to the mundane.
establish things in rituals.
Yeah.
So symbols are huge in rituals.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Like, B was just setting up this tiny little altar right here with this cute flower and this little lion carving that I gave to his
through
dad.
the chaos that
Through the chaos.
occurred.
And he just made this cute little altar here. And then there's so many stories in this tiny little sphere. So there's the flowers that you brought, because I asked for flowers and she brought them to me, and she's so romantic and I love her. I was like, this is so beautiful. We have fresh flowers on set. And then there's a Ganesh ring that I think my eldest gifted to you, possibly. The geode that we got in Arkansas that we split in half.
Ganesh
and he
and abundance.
he glued the Ganesh ring inside
No, I got that from Colorado.
the geode. And then
Amazing.
that's the lion head protector that I gave to his dad on his dad's deathbed. And then that purple flower came from this crown that Izzy made for me from last year's Pride Festival, where Mommy came out as Pan, because there's a new
Precious.
category for Mommy. So I was like, why not?
Isn't it liberating how these labels can
labels
help
liberating?
us?
Like, it's so fucking oxymoron. Like that. Okay, that's the deeper irony. I take it back. Liberating labels. What the fuck are we doing? They're like, Mom, you're actually pan. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm actually pan. And so, right on. And they wanted to go to Pride. So we went to Pride and I dressed up as my fairy self.
Amazing.
Rainbow fairy self. And I gave out love and hugs to all the unhugged children.
Yes.
And I was hug fairy mommy.
Want.
Yeah, I was like, girl, come get these hugs. Get on. It was a blast.
Beautiful.
Dude, you talking about symbols or reminding me of I wanted to do it before we recorded this, but maybe we could do it today. But I remember hearing about this symbolic ritual of you like, I'm trying to remember, you like write something on a rock that something about, not about you or
something you want to let go.
Yeah, let go, get rid
heard
of
that one.
Yeah.
And you like tie a rope to it and you literally you're supposed to drag it to hopefully like a body of water.
Yeah.
We have like a
So
creek
do you
want to
do that with us?
And so you drag it.
I'm down.
And then literally, yeah, just the because honestly, I want to experiment. Like, what is this?
Okay.
What is the symbolic ritual of getting rid of something I want to get rid of, and then doing that, dragging it? It's it's literally ingrained in your memory, and like you leave it there.
Yes, your
and
muscle
so next time you
memory.
try to think, it's like, well, I gotta like, if I'm not holding myself accountable, then I'm like, who else? Like, I can't blame anyone else if I like keep going. But
Beautiful. Do you want to ritualistically drag rocks down to the creek with us
Yes.
when we're
and
done with
symbolically
with
release
all the bullshit
Yeah.
that we're
all the
carrying
boulders
around?
that-
We're gonna release it.
this is the perfect Patreon extra. If you want to see us
Hey,
drag
if you
a
want
rock,
to see us drag a rock to the river,
chip in,
that's what
buddy.
we'll be doing.
Chip in.
drag the rock to the river.
Dragging
Let
the
go
rock to
of
the
your
river.
past.
Let
Drag the rock
go of
river.
all your bullshit. Leave it all behind.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the power of music and symbol and dance.
And it's all
just-
ritual,
yes.
baby.
And dances are pretty ritualistic, especially if people
Yes.
gather to a thing. You dress all crazy and
Okay, so
and
listen.
one of the things they were talking about the Zulu and Swazi people and how they do these like one is those people who jump. I think it's the Swali, but they view that as like a measure of fitness and athleticism and matingness and stuff. And the same with there's like another one that just does a dance and like the women, they just gauge it and then they ask for the guy to come home and like it's like
One ritual that really spoke to me when I started circus arts was the whirling dervishes.
They're so gorgeous.
Right.
And I just there's this epiphany that I had while I was on my lyra and I was spinning and I was like, wow, this is
You're
so
in a holy
hypnotic.
field.
yeah.
It's so hypnotic.
Wait, you literally create a holy field
Yes, and
around
that's-
you.
It came to me as
my
I was spinning and I
God.
was like, I am embodying a whirling dervish right now. And I was like,
Yeah.
how could I inspire others to see ritual in the mundane in this way?
You're doing it by performing, right? And also, you are moving in a sacred seed formation when you're up there.
just spiraling and spinning.
Right. So you are already moving in
Vortexing.
sacred geometric ritual.
And
So you're
do you remember-
creating this vortex and this energy in the room. And of course, that's naturally what people are going to feel and see. So you see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't have to, that is your language.
Do you ever remember being a kid
Is
and
being
just
up
spinning-
on the lyra and being the embodiment of the energy.
inspiring this feeling of otherworldliness in people, of that theta brainwave state, of that
Yes.
creative
I think kids do that well.
hypnoticism.
Kids do.
Because like when you see
spinning,
cause, like,
Hypnoticism.
when you just see a kid and they
Yeah,
inspire you,
eroticism.
they inspire you to
Exactly.
just to like, oh yeah, just fucking be carefree.
Oh
yeah,
my
but
gosh.
just
See,
spinning.
Because you see a
That's-
kid, you
I
see a kid
love
spinning,
autistic
and I think
kids
they're doing it because it's like a
because
sense of you're getting
of
altered.
that.
You're like,
Exactly.
"What?"
Oh, and that's why you love us, because
Dude, I remember tripping on the beach once, and I remember just spinning. I was just spinning in circles, and then I'd stop, and the world keeps spinning, and I was like, "Whoa!" And I remember being like instantly flashback to being a kid. I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember. It's fun to just like play with your senses and just
Yes.
make your world
Yes.
spin." And I'm like,
but that's part of altering And
Yeah, it's like kid drugs.
it's part of wanting to alter ourselves as humans. This is a natural. This is a natural occurrence in human beings. It's not something unnatural. What is unnatural, unfortunately, through addiction,
numbing and dulling of everything.
Well,
It's taking that sacred from the ritual.
right? So it becomes self-medication instead of sacred ritual.
Well, everything's profit. Everything is to make money now instead of like, what can we get the best experience for the
So whereas we used
soul.
it as medicine in order to commune multidimensionally
It's control
or
now,
multispiritually, we're using it to maintain ourselves every day. And that's when it becomes a problem, when it becomes a maintenance.
That extreme.
Well, yeah, it could be hijacked, like the military.
Instead
like
of
they
it
do all
being
kinds
a
of crazy
ritual
rituals.
medicine,
Shave your
instead of
head.
it being a ritual medicine, it becomes a daily medicine.
Yeah, what do they say?
And that's where it becomes dangerous because it becomes habitual.
The difference between medicine and poison is the dose.
And
right?
I think that's the difference between ritual and habitual.
Ooh, I like that. That's juicy. Ooh, that's
like-
some juicy shit.
That's like that's what you want your drug use to be. Ideally, is ritual, not habitual. But
Ritual, not habitual. I'm gonna make T-shirts. I'm gonna make panties. Ritual, not habitual.
Hey.
Hey.
I love that. Oh my god. Woo.
Everything in moderation, Grandma. That's what that means.
moderation is key. Yes.
Ritual, not habitual. That's where we're at. That's where Miss Calibri's at. That's where I'm at. Ritual, not habitual. I used to be quite the abuser.
Yeah.
And
I mean, me coming on 30,
but it was self-abusing and it was self-medicating. I definitely partook in that sort of mindset for some time, in and out of it, you know, in and out of it. You kind of, you can't stay conscious all the time when you don't have both feet in the knowledge, you know. So you got to kind of practice for a little while, and
yeah, and I think personally,
it's a little awkward,
like,
fitting.
I feel like a lot of my 20s were dedicated in that. And it got me really thinking about, like, you know, I really found myself in these like new age groups. And I think a lot of that had an influence from my mother, who was very like one foot in Hinduism, another foot in new age self-help stuff. And
oh, wow.
and I think unconsciously, I feel like because I was so detached from my personal sense of spirituality as a teen, I had this near-death experience. And it got me thinking about, you know, my spiritual self and really wanting to embody that mindfulness in my life. And I think I automatically just attached myself to all these new age communities. And, you know, a lot of people are talking about, you know, the sacredness of using these medicines and how that is shifting with the pharmaceutical companies getting involved, and how we view sacredness and ritual with substances. And
yeah, because they're trying to make psychedelic drugs that don't make you trip, but like they're trying to make extract psilocybin to where you get the effects but not have the which I think is part of the ritual, is the feeling of it.
What you're
coming
doing
on,
is
and, like,
separating the feminine,
the visual you see and everything. But yeah, they're trying to deduct and extract everything. But yeah, that's, I remember hearing about that. I was like, I can't believe, dude, that's part of the experience. It's like you can't deduct,
letting go, releasing yourself to the chaos.
Yes, a feminine energy is innately surrendering. We surrender. That's why it's seen as submissive. It's not submissive. It's surrendering to what is.
And I mean, going back to
power in that is incredible.
Moon cycles.
Exactly. Thank you. We have to surrender to the cycles of our body. A lot of us feel like we
have to control it and put it in a box.
Yeah, but it's not about control. It's about what is. I used to say, like, my baby box is destroying me right now, or my baby box is betraying me, or it has betrayed me.
But I mean, I feel like a lot of us, when we are allowed to detach ourselves from these such square
It's square-minded.
schedules.
It is square-minded.
Our square schedules,
Yeah.
when we're allowed to just sit back and relax and just let go
You sound
of our
just like
bodies, of
Calibri.
ourselves as we are bleeding, we
you.
get to experience this chaotic, intuitive vessel that opens up instead of boxing it in and forcing your body to go
Exactly.
through this like thing that is
Right.
just
because
tearing
it's
you
within
apart.
a masculine schedule. So what needs to not happen is not equality. There needs to be equal sight. Like, you need to see me as I am. I see you as you are, and then we establish a system or systems that work for us as we
Collaborate
are. As we
authentically.
are.
Yeah, we're not
and not to
we're trying
see women as
monocrop-
weaker because they can't work
monocrop
all the time. You know what I mean?
Oh, we working in a different
But
way.
we shouldn't be doing that. We're stressing our feminine
Oh,
energy
honey,
this
we
way.
working.
We should be able to rest. When we need to rest. We
Rest
should.
is another form of work.
It is a small
You know?
birth every month that we go through.
Yeah,
It
I've
is a
learned that
tiny
I've learned that a lot
labor.
from you. Just
It's a tiny labor, and it's not just one labor. It's days of labor.
Yes.
Right. It's a lot.
I've learned
And-
that a lot from you from a male perspective of, you know, especially in our society of just the constant progress, just keep going, working, and you know, like linear kind of time, like
Yeah,
versus
it's that
like, oh yeah,
animus
more
energy.
like, yeah, this is more like a rest time. It's more cyclical, like more like,
Yes.
don't need to fucking keep do more than I did previous.
Right.
I'm like, that is such male thinking, but
It is.
It's very linear.
I've learned that a lot from you, yeah, like the linear aspect of that, and just
Yay.
yeah, just trying to relax it on certain shit and.
Yeah, and I
I don't
mean,
know.
your life
really-
totally changes when you stop looking at it from a linear way and start seeing it as a cyclical way.
Yeah.
It's not only cyclical, it's,
It's not as
spherical.
dire. It's not as dire and
Life is spherical.
All the circles.
It's all the things, right? It's
a circle
everything
of circles.
all at once. All the time. Everywhere. All the stuff.
The absurdity, the chaos.
It's the absurd. Oh, chaos is a beautiful little string. It's not a very strong energy, but man, whenever you like latch onto that little string in the universe, it's like, woohoo, you better hold on. So chaos has its purpose in our lives. Chaos is so purposeful, and I am grateful for chaos because it stirs things up a little bit. You know, it
The surrender.
rattles us in a way that goes, oh, well, I needed to be paying attention to this certain part of my life.
Yeah, it'll check your ego.
And I wasn't.
For sure.
And a lot of times, like, once you start becoming more attuned with yourself and attuned with life, chaos isn't as strong as it used to be because the signs
gotta
don't need to be
adapt.
as loud.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yes.
you see it early
When
on.
you start becoming mindful
Yeah,
of
when you start becoming
the
really
rituals, the
mindful,
symbols that
the
chaos
show
is
up.
less-
the old tricks
Yeah.
coming back around.
Yeah, 'cause you're like,
You start to
I
see that
recognize
cosmic
you.
joker, that little
girl,
cosmic
that voice
jester.
gets loud early. It's like it's a loud alarm. It becomes like really early too. It doesn't like it used to get loud at the end, and you're like, oh yeah, oh right, that was that. I'm finally getting it. Now it's like, nope, I'm squashing that shit. I want to feel happy
So
today.
you start to see these patterns, these symbols, and then you're like, wait a second, I've seen this before, been here, done that. Now,
well, and your
let's-
nervous system it registers it more as an unwanted stress, and because you've built such a threshold of self-trust, you're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go with that and get rid of that unwanted stimuli
And I
focus more on what's directly like beautifully stimulating.
yes, it's that ability to not just adapt, but transmute and channel this change.
That's the word, is transmute. That's one of my favorite words too, because you really do, like, you take the energy, like any cell dealing with energy, it uptakes and it transmutes that energy. It either breaks it or it binds it. It depends on what you are in the universe. You're a breaker or a binder. But energy is always transmuting. It never dies. It just changes. It just gets broken or it gets added to something else. And it keeps morphing. So I'm like, in sacred ritual practice of life, we're always searching, or not searching, but just living in that, just knowing that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of
The
that
embodiment.
has to do with faith. Like, what do you do with yourself when you're in the midst of that chaos? like what pulls you back down to earth? Like there's so many people that are so depressed right now that don't
Trusting
even,
myself.
what are their rituals, you know, when when you can't even get up to brush your teeth? Like what's binding that faith to the earth, to your physical form?
Yeah, I have to trust myself a lot.
And I think that's a part, of adaptation. That's a part of being able to transmute that chaos, is adapting. And how well are you at adapting? How do you train yourself every day in your daily habits to be able to adapt to the chaos that happens in your life?
I think this is why,
is adaptability.
I think this is why B and I are able to live the way we do in the way that we actually want to live, because we're really adaptable creatures. I mean, we were both born inside of insanity.
I mean, what puts your faith in that, though? You know?
My faith is in our ability, because I look back. Honestly, it goes to memo or memory and the gods and goddesses of that sector of the universe and the multiverse. Because
like
archetypically, maybe, yeah, as we translate it here in our 3D world. I would say it goes back to memo, because I look at where we were right before I decided that this was going to become a homestead. In that spark of a moment, B decided to go to Colorado. I'd been looking at this place. It was offered up by an old client of mine, said, hey, there's this land on my land. Would you like it? Come look at it. And so I came and I looked at it. I looked at it with my daughter, and I was like, there's no way. This place is condemnable. It's dilapidated. Like, it's completely run down. Like, nature has taken over. And not only that, but it was just like where they used to tie up their horses, and it was just hay and like cracked clay. And now, 5 years later, you step onto the land today, right? And
you'd have no idea.
You'd have no clue. And that was just in 5 years. And when it took 15 years for the place to decay like that, you know, without any human interaction. But it was built in 1960. So we're dealing with a 60-foot 1960 trailer, you know, that was like abandoned for 15 years.
Wow.
And this is just where people tied off their horses. So it's just nothing. And now it's a whole food forest.
Yeah.
Now it's a whole Eden.
What like gave you that courage?
That's what I'm saying. I trusted myself. I trust myself. I trust myself.
Yes.
Yeah, we're good at taking
I know what I can do and what I'm
capable.
capable of, and that if I can do it, and if I can't do it, I can hire somebody to do it with me or for me.
Yeah.
But
I think we're both just good at like taking the plunge and just being like, fuck
just
it.
jumping in.
Fuck it, dude. I'm like, I'm not going back that way anymore. So I'm like,
That's also a factor for sure. Is like, I'm making this decision. We're going forward, and this is what we're doing now. And we just
taking that risk.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
It's like this is an idea that really turned you on so much so that you were just like, there's no other choice.
When we pulled up, after I made the final decision, it was 2 days after he went to Colorado, and I was like, I decided to make a homestead out of this land. And he's like, what? And so Izzy and I started renovating, gutting this place and like cleaning it up. And I remember the 2 days, that day I decided, I was like, let's go look at the place. I want to ritualistically go and tie back. I want to ritualistically go and walk the land, and I want to imbue my intention on the ground.
Connect with it.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know. So that's what we came and did. And as soon as I got out of the car and I came around the car door, my body did a full front walkover without me doing it. It was not me. It was my body. And I just, as soon as my head came back up straight, I started crying tears of joy. And I was like, I made the right decision. This is it. This is the whole future. This is where everything begins.
Amazing.
And so I wasn't worried about the timeline. I wasn't worried. I just knew I had the deeper vision, the bigger vision. And I was like, we just have to start walking. And my body literally started just tumble salting over itself. My nervous system was so happy because my nervous system was fucked. I'm telling you, and I was doing everything for years, right? And I have been what people will call now CPTSD since 2000 and, well, I guess since my whole life, but really since I escaped a domestic violence situation and I won permanent protection order through the Supreme Court in order to get protection and custody of my daughter. And so then I came to Texas because this is a mother state and we were safer. And anyway, that's a whole thing. And I forgot why I started talking about that.
I mean, you just felt like this unseen connection with the land. So this is the
healing place.
And how it affected your nervous system. And, you know, going back to astrology, the sixth house is all about the nervous system.
Precisely.
That's why we do these rituals, you know?
Yes.
To help soothe our nervous system.
So this whole place that you're on right now, even this is like a smaller cell of the larger cell of the big egg that I created here energetically with golden light. When we first got here, I went and I walked into the center of the land and I constructed this big energy dome egg.
You can feel it. You can feel it anytime you approach that gate.
And I keep it up all the time. Every time I go outside, I'm like, oh, okay, I feel that I need to go and charge us up. So I charge us up. And that's just one of my rituals. That's something I do. And I feel like I'm protecting and, you know, like reflecting and embodying and imbuing all this love I have for our life onto the land, and then only inviting that in amplifying it.
They said they did studies on rituals that they were as or more effective than like Tylenols and like shit like that for like relieving stress and tension and everything. And but then they're talking about the whole book. They're talking about the dilemma of trying to study rituals, like especially in a lab, when the whole thing is like environment and setting, and they're trying to like isolate this, like what makes a ritual powerful or effective. But it's like it's the whole. You can't quantify it. It's like because when they ask all these people who do all these crazy ones, they're like I don't know. I don't really have words for it. It's just something you have to like feel and do and be a part of. And so like, you know, science, they always they're coming from the totally wrong angle of trying to even study it. But
I agree.
I mean, there's just this such strong boundary between you know, how a lot of our, you know, Western culture mindset, you know, is so attached to what we can see and touch.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all material. Yeah, we've really been trained into materialism of energy.
And reductionism. It's very reductionist, but...
Yeah, I fully agree in that.
Yeah, if you can't hit it with a hammer, then, you know,
so if
like, it doesn't count.
If you're trying to approach the unseen by focusing on the scene, then it's like...
Or patterns. Right, well, like science measures like repeatable patterns, but there's stuff that exists out, like paranormal stuff that exists outside of this pattern waveform. It's like it comes in blips and you barely catch it and you barely even recognize it. But in science, you can't deny its existence just because it's not in this like one waveform of like how we measure stuff.
One waveform is the whole point, is because that's not how things exist. That's not how things interact. That's not how this thing works. How any of it works is in singularity or in a control of any type.
Yeah, or just reduction.
Or I mean, the observer effect.
To one thing.
You talk about the observer effect, and it's like as soon as we observe something, it changes. Even if you have
consciousness of it, it changes it. So how do we not affect upon something? You can't have anything scientific because it's all bullshit, because you can't have controls within nature.
It's fallible simply because humans are creating it.
I think the only controls we have are within weather phenomena, and that's because certain things have to interact and happen at a certain time and point and temperature.
I mean, there's so many theories about
in order for that to happen.
The joke of it all is
humans interacting with that.
The joke of it all is I think it was Descartes, whatever his name is, who came up with science and like, you know, we should repeat and measure things down and break things down.
Yeah.
He said that it came to him in like a vision that he had, and like a very non-scientific vision.
This
just
was
came
not that
onto
long
him
ago
and-
either. Okay, this was like 1600s. So
No, it was like ancient Greece, but it was but
No,
still they're like just
What
the
what is it about?
just the idea, the guy who came up with the idea for science, and like we should measure stuff, we should break stuff down and like break stuff down into measurements. Like he said that came to him in a vision he had, like a spontaneous like you know paranormal vision. But
okay, but if that was a woman, she'd
It's
be
funny,
burned
that's
at the
the-
stake for being a witch.
yeah, I don't know if he said that as he announced it or not, but
Do you see the difference?
for sure
But I
a
mean,
vision.
yeah, it's taking these unseen things and putting them in a system.
What about like menstruation? I feel has been put into a system instead of being celebrated and honored as a cycle, and a natural cycle that has fluctuation in every woman, and that we all adhere to that instead of a universal.
Well, my favorite quote
Fuck.
that I love is to label me is to negate me, because once you define it as this one
Exactly.
thing, it ceases to be anything beyond your definition. So like I don't know, I see the
It stables the mind,
the
so you already
limitations of
have
labels, and like
Yeah.
like I'm a Republican, so I can only have these views and likes, and like
yeah.
But isn't
You're
it
not a
so
Mustang
interesting, like
anymore.
what we were talking about earlier, the irony of the liberation of labels and also how confining they can be.
Well, because they go directly back to the label because it's so insecure. Like, so I think it's actually the ritual
confining is-
around
yeah.
it that's insecure in itself. Because every time they find a label, they're like, "Oh, but it's gotta, we gotta
you
go back to
create,
the
you start to create rituals around this label.
right." Instead of
that's
conducting the
religion for you.
rituals and the
Everyone
label
gets their little
presenting.
thing, and then like we got rituals and
Yeah. I just don't like labels. You know what? Whenever I was a badass little teenager, when I wasn't as kind, you know, I was in my little bratty years, right? I would call people like label whores, you know. But it was never to someone's face. It was always, you know, like the equivalent of what online trollers would be now. It's like we're driving by and they're like walking
IRL.
down the street, you know, and I'm like, fucking label whore.
Yeah,
You know,
I
so
really
it wasn't
Isn't it
personal.
so
I really
funny
told them.
though
I
is that
told them.
you're labeling them a label whore.
I'm labeling
Right?
them a label whore.
Isn't that insane?
Well,
But here's the
I'm
thing.
wiser now.
But here's the thing about it is that we do need labels, and that's
Do we
something that
need
I.
labels?
So this is something that I've been contemplating since my Saturn return.
Is it for categorization though, so that we can find understanding?
Yes. And so I started to realize, you know, with this ideology that I grew up with of, you know, this, like I was saying, Hinduism, Buddhism, self-help, New Age kind of rhetoric is, you know, surrender the ego, become one with the collective. And I think that really destroyed
That's
me.
so extreme.
That really destroyed my ego and the ego that I need as an individual and identity for myself to exist as one person and have confidence in being one person and not identifying with the collective. And so I've started to realize how important ego development is and how we are not just a collective. We have to have these boundaries. We have to create these labels to protect us. I mean, it doesn't have to be in a linguistic label. It could even be a label like.
Are you saying it's just like another boundary?
Like the bubble that you put around this place?
yeah, the golden light energy.
It's
Yeah.
a specific targeted intention, and I think that's something
Ritual
that
is all about intention, though. Isn't
and
it?
that's the thing about labels and the way that how far we've come with labels and how much we attach ourselves to the labels is I
Yeah, it
think
becomes
that's
your
the
identity,
key is
like
because
you're
you're
saying.
creating these rituals around these labels.
I think the only ritual I create a label around is homesteading. Like,
That's a powerful
I've always thought
Yeah,
about
that's
like
the
if
only
I
one.
had to label myself, like what would I pick? And I was like, I remember thinking anytime I heard a noun, I'm like, I don't know, but I'm like artist. I'm like I like it because it's kind of free and open. But
yeah, but what is art is so subjective. I mean, that's actually
yeah, I know, but
what we're in and unschooling
that's why
right
that's
now.
why my loophole around it was I'm like it's because it's vague. I'm like artist is very vague, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any like other
like
things I heard,
life
but I'm always like
artist.
I don't like that man because that means I can't be this or that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so necessary, especially as 2-year-olds. You know, when they're really coming
Yeah.
into their sense of identity and like, oh, I'm separate from you.
Yeah, but they're also like, I'm a puppy, and I'm like, cool, you be a puppy, you be you. Boo.
Yeah, I remember Ayn
you
Rand
know.
talked about that a lot, like the individual versus the collective, and like because she grew up in like communist Russia, I think it was Russia, and then how that's very collective, like you know you have to like a communistic
There's collectivist
mindset.
cultures and there's
And-
individualistic
Yeah,
cultures.
America is very individual. Ever since that stinker statue was made, that's when like the individual reflecting inwards it like started.
The
And,
meta
like,
phase.
America is like the extreme of that, a very hyper individualistic.
But is it though? Because the American dream is all about like maybe it is still hyper individualistic because it's a nuclear family, so
Yeah,
they're
it's
all
like the
kind
whole
of like
bootstraps, pull yourself up, you
separated
do it.
within themselves.
I
a
could
little
get into a
cell
whole
of
another
themselves.
rant about
We
the
worship
psychological history of that era.
Of the American dream, right? The 50s really was a
I mean,
great
when the
reset.
nuclear family was invented.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
recent,
and it was
that's
because of a
recent
nuclear
idea.
state of thinking too. Which
I
is
mean,
really
okay,
interesting.
if we're gonna go there,
we could go wherever we want. We could go wherever we want.
so I mean,
I need to go pee. Is what I need to do.
I have to
Oh.
go pee.
I mean, low-key, I need to go pee too.
Okay, what?
Can you
what
hold
thought
the
were you gonna?
thought?
Were
Can you
gonna-
hold it?
Nuclear family.
Hold it.
We'll
I
pause
mean-
on there.
Yeah, okay.
And
like
we're
the little
back.
thing.
Thank you.
We're back.
And we're back.
Hey.
Hey. Welcome.
We're professional over here. If you can't tell.
Okay,
Our
so
amazing set.
what we ended
Nuclear
on before,
family?
yes, the history of the nuclear family in the U.S. So,
Oh boy.
I had this amazing psych history professor, in college, and he taught us about this man named Spock.
Spock.
Dr. Spock?
Yes.
Oh,
Was this man a
God.
doctor?
So his name
Oh,
is
no.
his name is Benjamin Spock, and he created. It says here, Spock in his manual helped revolutionize child rearing methods for post World War II generation.
God, I can't stand this.
And it was
man.
called the quote unquote the Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care.
Of course.
Ooh.
Written by a man.
I'm feeling very triggered.
And this was published July 14th, 1946.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And
That's not that far.
it's
That's within someone who's alive.
our grandparents' time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our grandparents were brainwashed.
We're in the
It
we're
was
in the shadows of that.
horrendously.
We're in the shadows of that.
horrendously.
horribly
And
brainwashed.
so, you know, this is the time where mothers stopped breastfeeding. This is the time where the cry it out method became popular, right? It
Formula.
absolutely tore up a generations that we're now seeing epigenetically is creating such destruction that we're seeing now.
Preach it, sister. Yes.
And
And nobody wants to talk about it.
I mean,
Except
nobody
for
knows
us.
about it. Nobody knows about it. Even the people who lived in that generation, they don't even realize what happened to them. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
No, but they're
love
waking
it.
up to it now,
They
too,
love their
though.
brainwashing. It's like brand loyalty is like it's almost like patriotism. They're like, yeah,
And
that's my company.
It's
And, like,
Stockholm syndrome, darling.
Yeah.
for sure, mass Stockholm syndrome.
And
For
after the
sure.
war, that fucking war fucking just tore people up, man. Like it did so much like
No, and there wasn't
PTSD
any
and-
mental healing. And then we went straight into being a generation of parents, like everybody all at once.
Yeah, it's like a Leave It to Beaver type of,
Yeah.
you gotta,
So it
have
was
all this
parenting
kinda-
with PTSD.
Oh god.
Right.
And then creating
The
the,
ripples of
nuclear
that.
household, right?
Yes,
Where there's
everything
no village
perfect.
anymore.
It's
Yeah.
perfect and perfection, and everything is.
It all falls on the mom and father.
But what's interesting
it's a
is
lack of
that
community? Yeah.
the the only way that this book could have been published is to do psychological testing, right?
Right.
And so that is it, somewhere along like the 1920s or so, they started experimenting on young children. They started telling parents, we'll give you this money if you bring your children in to do these psychological studies. And
Oh boy.
and you know,
No flags raised for me.
a lot of them were based on fear.
They still are.
The test? Is that what you're talking
The
about?
testing,
Oh,
like
yeah.
like what brings fear to this baby? And
They're easily controllable, I feel, in the fear state, because you're like panicking, looking for answers, and you're like, I'll believe what they tell me, and some type of security and safety.
yeah.
And then they find out the limit of what is needed.
What is the limit? So that they can
for-
still function
Yeah. It's so
and
it's
also
so
be in this state of mind control and fear. Yeah. And so
It's like
ultimately,
what is the least amount of nurturing that we can possibly do for you to feel safe and
Right.
secure, and we'll perform that for you regularly, but also incite incredible fear and longingness
Yes,
within
and
you as well.
really, when it comes down to it, the entire premise of this was to create generations down the line that are fit for war, to be
Yeah.
soldiers,
Yeah.
to be so desensitized from pain and suffering in each other,
Yes.
to be able to get to the point of inciting it in other people.
I've always had this theory with Call of Duty, and like, I mean, it's been
Yeah.
they literally like recruit people from those games to be like drone pilots, because like, oh, it's just like a game. They're going to be detached from what they're actually doing.
Do you
And
feel
then
like
so they
that's a
do it,
recruitment method?
Yeah, they use it as like a recruitment board, but and then so these guys think they're just fucking
That's
playing the game, and then
disturbing.
they get PTSD because, oh wow, I just like blew up these fucking wedding. Like, what am I doing? Like, even though but they're so detached behind this screen in Colorado, and they're like dropping bombs over there. But I don't know.
And I mean, that's the first thing we learn as children. You know, empathy is not a natural thing that occurs for us. We have to learn empathy as babies, and we have to when we see our mother spanking our little brother, and we're taught to not feel anything. We start to normalize the suffering of other people and just being okay with it.
You know, normally
You can't
I would
question
agree
the
with
authority.
that, but that actually, it brought me to like such an anti-violence, justice-like mindedness to see my little brother be beaten by my mother and to be abused. And I always swore that I would never be physically violent towards another. Like, that was a pact I always had with myself. And that was a self-learned thing from just studying the environment around me and what I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be violent. Like, violence, I've always been a pacifist first. Unless violence is integral to my survival. And now we talking, you know. But that they've interlaced you feeling like violence is integral to your survival is the big lie. And that that's the only way that things can work here. And that's real fucked up. And I get real upset and angry about that my people believe that over
Me too.
love and peace and just serenity, just being like everything's right in the world, like that being a viable thing. Let's imagine that. Which
Yeah,
do you
and
want?
It's collaboration, communicating, you know, and being
Yes.
open and just literally learning empathy. Like, this is a completely different being that I'm interacting with right now. Like, how can I give my message to them in the best
So are you
way?
saying we only learn empathy through experience?
I mean, how to practice it.
Well, practicing.
know?
I mean, yeah, that's anything, like practicing anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
That
we only learn
rituals that
walking.
we create every day, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 'cause I feel like if you're a kid, you're not really thinking about until you see something happen like that, to where like, oh, now I have to, empathize and put myself in their shoes and feel what they're feeling. But because otherwise, you're not really think, unless that stimuli gets presented to you, you're like, I didn't even know that existed
So
until
do you feel
I
like
saw that. But
the level of empathy is directly affected by experience, by the amount of experience that you've had?
Okay, so there's also something that I learned about in one of my classes called the mirror neuron.
Ah, yes.
And I had this epiphany in class where I was like, that's where empathy comes from.
Mirroring?
The mirror neuron. So there is a set of neural pathways. I mean, when we're children, our brains are so active.
Oh, yeah.
So active. And over time, we go through this pruning process. And if we're not taught to engage those mirror neurons, that sense of connectedness, then that pathway slowly deteriorates. And I don't think that we're completely desensitized when we come into this world, because I think we're so sensitive when we come into this world, but that we are still ultimately subjected to our brain and our neural pathways and how we perceive things.
So I fully agree. And this is in line with something that I'd like to bring about the topic of birth and how we're brought into this world. And
that's a ritual.
Is that an empathetic process?
That is a ritual that I like to be involved in with more women and a connected community of women that make a peaceful and even orgasmic birth possibilities all around the Western world.
It's so
It's so needed. It's so fucking vital, because birth, the energy that we're brought into, the room that we're brought into, it's either peace or it's chaos or it's worry or anxiety. It's some sort of overarching energy.
So are you a big proponent for water births?
I'm big a proponent for as closest to nature as we would give birth in nature as possible.
Definitely not bright lights and this guy with a mask on and shit's beeping.
No, this was also birthed in the same era that she's been speaking to. It's like it's the sterile earth that you and I've been speaking about.
Yeah, that hygiene.
It's the hygiene hypothesis, right? As it pertains to all spheres of life, as it pertains to every bit of life, to be sterile and to be hygienic. But really, birth needs to be a very eco-immersive experience.
Yeah, isn't that what they say? C-sections are bad for the babies because they don't get that vaginal biome on
You don't get the biome, the slime.
If you do a C-section, you're supposed to like rub it on them.
You're supposed to get filmed by the vaginal canal. And some women, they just can't give birth vaginally. Sometimes it happens and the C-section has to happen. But the scheduling of C-sections on dates that they can get off from work is insane to me. I'm sorry, that is my opinion.
When my OBGYN told me in just matter of factly in the session, he's like, yeah, so we're going to induce you on this day. And I was like, what? This isn't how that works.
Oh my gosh, but he's so used to saying that.
And he was like, yeah, and then we'll give you this epidural. And I was like, we're what? Like, no, you're not shoving that needle in my spine. Like,
no, girl. I only had midwives involved. I never had doctors involved.
That's the standard.
I went to a midwife with both my children, and I was like, there will be no doctors involved. Even with Izzy, she was a preemie. She was 2 months early. But even in the hospital, I was in the midwifery, and I would not allow a doctor into my room. I was like, absolutely not. Only my midwives in here. At all fucking times. I was in there for 4 days and it was driving him insane.
You holding her hostage?
By the fourth day, he was at the door with his little bald fucking white pink head and he was like, do you want an epidural? He was just
trying to get that money.
Aching.
All I know is drugs.
And I was like, get him out of here. And so I had nothing but my midwives, 4 days active labor trying to keep her
A lot of people don't have that sense of empowerment to protect themselves.
They
like that.
don't. And I want women to feel empowered by their births. I want them to feel empowered by being pregnant.
One of my
want
friends
them
in
to
high
feel-
school, his girlfriend at the time got pregnant, and this was before she gave birth, but she's like, I remember hearing her say that, she's like, damn well I'm getting that epidural. And I was like,
wow.
I barely knew anything about birth, but I was like, you're going
When I
in
was
expecting
pregnant,
it? I'm
there
like,
were so many people who got so angry, visibly and verbally angry, that I didn't want an epidural.
That you didn't want any.
All these other
mothers. I know.
because it goes against their system of thinking, like this pharmaceutical.
It's just like how far deep in this trauma.
But it's pain
are
avoidance.
you?
It's pain. Yeah. It's pain avoidance. We're like in an avoidance stage, where we're not using the pain as a powerful signifier.
For me, my birthing experience, I feel so lucky at how beautiful it was. I mean, it was painful as fuck, of course, but it's like
it's part of it, right?
There's this transmutation of the pain. You're so deep in it that you have no other choice but to open up and surrender.
Exactly, and then it's just pressure, and then it's you against the pressure at that point, and then it's like you are the pressure.
It was such a beautiful experience for me, and I think
this is wild. I can't fathom. I'm trying to.
I mean, I literally felt like this channel open up and just flow through me and bring him out. It was like, and I truly felt like I wouldn't have had that experience if I wasn't so confident in my body to handle it.
Yes, precisely. Did you mean to push that?
No.
I'm trying to think of what are some birth rituals.
Birthing with the dolphins in the Red Sea is what I wanted to do initially. That was my big dream.
Yeah, what's like top tier birthing for women?
That was my top tier birthing.
Oh my God, that is incredible. That is an incredible vision.
My second was snow at the saunas in Russia, and then you run into the broken ice pond. And you swim a lap, and then you come back into the sauna. And I was like,
post-birth?
In Russia, in the snow in winter. I'm like, for labor, like for birth.
Whoa.
Wow.
But my first was,
contraction and
my first was in the Red Sea with the dolphins. And so they could help assist in my labor, hopefully, maybe, if they chose me to help me.
That's pretty cool.
That's magical.
Yeah, I saw it on one of my midwives' birthing videos. Like, she had this library, kind of like our stairs right here with a library in it. And when I would go into her office, I would just instantly gather up books. And she's like, okay, yeah, you can take those for the week. And so I had ended up with all these bundles of books and videos. And so I got really deep into birthing and birthing ceremony and birthing ritual. And just womb studies in general. And I mean, really dissecting my second birth.
Fertility
Understanding
rituals
fertility
rituals.
Like educating yourself about the rituals that you partake in,
Yes.
Like really educating yourself about the history of them really allows you to put your own intention into it. It does.
And I promised myself that one day I would be either a doula or a midwife. And so I feel like I'm coming into that doula era, like pre-midwife. Like I feel like midwife is like Crohn's age, like Crohn era. You know what I mean?
When you have all that experience.
Yeah, and both of my little elven creatura of midwives that I had, their hands were so tiny. They were like these tiny little elven women they were both Polish. And they were like just amazing forest creature, just naturalists, and assisted me in my birth where I didn't have a mother presence. Mm-hmm. And it meant so much to me. Like
being able to hold you in that container.
It's deeply ingrained in me. Mm-hmm. And I'd love for my Crohn's purpose to be something like that, to hold the generation for other women and to, embody safety and security for women, and then be a safe haven, and then be like a matriarch of medicine. And I'm ready.
Yes, I feel it.
Yeah. It's nice.
And I feel like the importance of a doula is to bring that empowerment, that voice
Yeah. So do you feel like you're now like a what I call like a practice doula, or you're like a bridge doula almost for people now?
A shame doula.
Yeah, you're like a life doula of sorts for people in the in between. You know, coming out of addiction and trauma, and
I see where
coming
you're going
into
now.
themselves and a
Yes.
new life
Yes,
trajectory.
it's a symbolic birth of self,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So you're like a pain doula.
I mean, yeah, and I mean that's like the nature of, you know, ritualistic extremes addiction is that we start to lose sight of what we're identifying as. And so we have to go through this kind of ego rebirth and transform like how we're identifying ourselves
Yeah.
and how
What
we're
if we
showing up in the
don't-
world.
What if we don't identify ourselves, but we allow for the labels that other people give us because that's how they perceive us? But we don't necessarily perceive ourselves as anything but like fluid.
That's how I heard people used to pick shamans. It's like you
That's how I
kind of get
feel.
elected as. It's not like the guy's like, I'm the shaman. They're like, no, the
Yes,
community
yes,
says you're the
yes.
shaman.
Oh,
So
that's
it's like,
what I've been talking
That's
about lately.
powerful.
Is my medicine woman is it gets like imparted upon me.
That's the whole problem with like a president. Is like
Yes.
someone wants to
And
be
that's
president.
also something
like,
that I identify
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
you know, it's again ironic about how like I actually have trouble finding myself in these roles that people give me
well,
because it's like
it's
people,
like an ill-fitting
Naturally.
suit.
well people
Yeah.
look at me and they see this, you know, a lot of my friends, a lot of like my communities have told me like, you know, you're so wise and like we see you as this like sage that comes out from the bushes, and I'm just like, I don't see myself as that.
Yeah, I don't.
I feel you.
And so I
Yeah.
mean maybe that like I don't know like how
How do you
we
see yourself?
This is how you start a cult and make money.
Oh my god, we're going into a therapy session for myself on camera.
I guess I am your
I'm
leader.
gonna pull back.
How do you see yourself?
Yes.
And I mean
Feed
that's
me.
something that I feel like for me right now that is exactly what I am trying to figure out through this ritualistic experimentation.
Ooh, okay. So what are you
Like
practicing?
what do you want to step
Yeah.
into?
Yeah, it's like what, you know, everyone has their definition of God, right? And so what is my God? What is something that I want to devote myself, my whole self to?
Is it about devoting yourself to a
I
singularity?
mean, it's what turns me on, right?
yeah.
What
is
gets
that
me
devoting yourself
what
to
gets me into
singularity?
that space of flow, into that space of connection, of joy, of ecstaticness, and
You got any contenders right now?
for me, it is nature. Nature is my God.
Oh,
Nature
yeah.
is what I devote myself to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we've talked. Yeah, I've talked about this.
In
about
every
being-
sense of what
If
nature
I had
is.
to pick something I
Yes.
legitimately worship, I'm like, it's the sun. Like I look at it every day.
Here we go, now we're talking.
I study it. Like, what is it doing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank God.
And
you
we
fucking
have
came up
rituals
today. I'm like,
Yeah.
For worshiping the sun. We do. We have rituals.
Yeah, dude.
Like
Anytime I get a
we-
chance, when we get a chance to like to bathe nude in that, dude, I'm like, God, this
Yeah.
feels so good, dude. I'm like,
When the
this
two
is
of us get to
amazing,
be
but I'm like,
naked on the land together and we're soaking up the rays together.
It's ecstatic.
And
It's joyful.
we're in our
you know?
plants.
Yeah, and you're on the earth, so it's like it's like
Yeah.
sun and moon, or like
Yeah.
you know, masculine and feminine, and
We're with our plants and we have all these pollinators flying and buzzing around us because of the fruit trees and the plants and the
yeah, man. And nature, how do you
Pollinators.
not?
We could just gush for hours.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible.
For days, for
It's
years,
like, I like
for
butterflies
lifetime.
personally.
And then there's this turkey that comes up to your ear and she starts cooing at you. And there's this little chicken that's over off to the side.
Well,
It's like
speaking of, this is the last
purring.
thing I had on this book, but speaking on nature being like so old and ancient, but they were talking about how rituals are the only thing I can think of where the older it is, the better it is, because we live in a society where the newer it is, the better it is. Like, you gotta get the newest one, because a couple years ago, that one's shit, dude. So that, don't worry about that one. But like, when we hear rituals, we're like, oh, that goes back how far? Like, okay, it's gotta have more value.
You think of ancient tradition, right?
So I was just talking with David about this, about how we're kind of losing our elders in society because of this new iPhone, you know, S24 now, or whatever the hell it is. Right? Like, okay, that's Samsung, but anyway.
Whatever. Late stage capitalism.
Slave phone, whatever.
Borefest. Okay. What I will speak to is that I feel like the elders are getting drowned out because it's always about the newer, better, faster, shinier, lighter, you know, does more AI art now. What in the hell? Okay, so I was saying to David, it's really important for you to keep getting up on that stage and keep speaking your truth and your perspective, because we don't have Carlin anymore. Carlin died. We need Papa Carlin, you know, like, to come up there on that comedic stage and just wax,
tell their stories,
philosophical, and call out bullshit. I'm like, we really need
from our
that.
elders.
Yes, because it will be respected.
I love connecting with an old person like that who still has that kind of spirit in them, and like, because I could tell they don't get that from many older people, and then like when they see that in a younger person, they're like, oh yes, they understand me, and they're like, this young, they get this like young's version of this, and like, I don't know, it's a and
isn't it?
I'm waiting for my life to turn to him. I'm the old guy, and I'm like, yes, this guy gets it. And I'm
me too. Me
I'm
too.
like, oh no, I'm gonna be that fucking old man.
Isn't it so interesting how, you know, we're just talking about the disrespect of children, and now we're talking about the disrespect of our elders. You know,
well, it goes both ways. I mean, one reflects the
Facebook
other. I think one is the
elders.
mirror of the other.
I don't think they could handle Facebook.
And I feel like, especially in the U.S., there is this view of caring for our community as burden.
But I feel like if we also saw our children as our elders, like, oh, we're raising
and our
our
elders
grandparents
like children, you know?
Yeah. So we really need to embody that
and seeing
mirror.
that in ourselves too.
And we're the mirror, because we're the middle aged.
I mean, but we all have an inner child. We all have an inner crone, right?
Oh, exactly. Okay, yes. So internally, yes.
And so many of us don't honor.
Hold the hand of your little self and honor your crone or your sir.
The wisdom, our past, our stories, you know.
Your future self, which is your higher self, which is the one you listen to, you know. That's like your Auntie Truthy. That's like your grandma. That's like your Nana.
Oh my goodness, we're gonna
doesn't
all these
pull any
archetypes.
punches. Yeah, we're gonna pull archetypes because they're important. Archetypes are important, and that's ritual too. Like, we invite archetypes into our card reading, right? Don't you invite archetypes for conversation and channeling?
Yes, you can use archetypes in rituals, and I'm just like you can use archetypes in your everyday life. I mean, they are instinctual. They're animalistic. You know, the sun god is an archetype. Like they weave themselves into not just our theological belief systems, but again, in our everyday lives.
Precisely.
Yeah, it's more impactful. It can be more impactful how you deliver the same message, but if you go, like, I heard someone say, like, mythology and astrology is like, or no, okay, so, like, astronomy is, like, kind of like telling this what the stars are doing in math form, but astrology and mythology is, like, telling what the stars are doing in story form, and how that's more relatable.
The psychology of astronomy is what I like to call it.
Yes.
Versus, like, okay, this is so systematically mathematical. I can't even, like, comprehend light years or how many miles. I don't even know what that even means. But if you tell, like, a story, so it's almost like more advanced, because it's like they know so much about their relationships with this stuff and like what they mean to each other, like, and they can tell you that in a story versus you know, fucking numbers. Like, ugh.
Yeah, so, I mean, it comes from a very animalistic part of us. We are storytellers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say that every episode. We are storytellers. That's what we do.
You know, we kind of went off track, but you know what I was speaking about for myself when you asked me, like, how do I identify myself, right? You know, I've been thinking about my belief systems and how devoted I feel spiritually to nature, and I'm thinking about what are the rituals that I do in my everyday life, does that reflect what I feel spiritually devoted to? Does that are my everyday actions reflecting my values as a person, how I want to see the world grow?
Yes.
And I think if I were to create an identity at all, it would be around that.
Yes.
It would be around my rituals.
Precisely. And that's why, like, I was speaking to in 2020 when I dropped out of everything and I disappeared. Whoop. That was because I was like, getting silenced, and the loudest I can speak is through my own practices, is through my own way of being, my own way of living. And so I'm just going to deepen myself in those rituals every day.
Yes.
My ritual practice of becoming self-sufficient. My ritual practice of growing as much of my own food as I can. And living as self-sustainably as possible. And that's my path. That's my soul path. Everything else is like icing and cupcakes and sparkles, you know? Yeah. And it was nice. It was so liberating. But then I got the call back to start working, speaking with the people in the public and
sharing,
being in community again,
sharing what you're devoted to.
Yeah. So I guess like I've filled my cup.
It comes in waves.
It comes in waves, and honestly, I'm an ambivert, so I need those times where I can just unplug and recharge, and then come back with more.
As you're talking about that feminine kind of, not just consistent all the time. Like I'm like, yeah, there's times where you gotta like, for the safe, you know, because like we live in this capitalistic 5 days a week kind of week, and that's like it's not designed for like human happiness. So it's like for people who just keep drudging along on that, like that fucking wears on you. So I love hearing from y'all. Just, you know, when you actually don't feel like doing that, I'm like, oh yeah, don't feel guilty or shameful for not fucking working or being productive, or it's a very Puritan mindset.
That's beautiful to hear from you and your masculine energy, because yes, that's exactly what the world needs, is to hear that.
My favorite quote to tell people is that rest is another form of productivity. If you're thinking about life on a cellular level, I mean, there is so much repair that needs to be done, and we're so focused on being productive for the world, and we're not thinking about how much repair and productivity that our bodies need just to like exist, just to function.
It's where values lie in rest, because you're absolutely right. The value should lie in rest rather than the
recovery
work.
And
the work is secondary to the rest. Like without the recharge, you know, you're not going to be able to bust ass.
Yeah, there's so many new studies about how beneficial sleep is, and like how like recovering it is. And I remember hearing this when I was in school about like if it's more efficient to sleep 8 hours than it is to like cram all night before a test. And I remember hearing that one time, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go to bed. I'm like, I'll deal with this test when I get up. But I was like, I think, but because
that's the whole point. Like, I'm just gonna go to bed. It'll all be fine. That's the mindset we need in everything. You know what? It's all gonna be okay.
Things will work themselves out.
They'll work out.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not gonna be the end of you.
Yeah, you're okay. Everything's all right.
Yeah,
you're loved.
But they always
I love you.
Like everything's pressurized and things that mean so much to us for our accreditations and whatnot.
We need more like loud inner self-love. Like we need to let our littles inside be our little cheerleaders, you know, and their little goofy like 7-year-old, 8-year-old selves, and be like, woo, you got this. I'm your biggest fan.
Well, I remember hearing that as like a thought exercise. Like, what would you tell like your 7-year-old self to? Like, I wouldn't tell them like, oh yeah, you fucking suck. Like, what are you doing? Like, they're like, no, you can do it. I'm like, you got this, and just keep going. But it's funny how much people's harsher like their self-talk can be than they're like they say the
Yeah.
meanest shit than anybody will ever say to them. But they're like,
I would say just treat yourself like you would treat a child. Like talk to your
Yeah,
little
you
self, because your
wouldn't-
little self is the one that's going to be listening. So, you know, what would you say to your little self in this situation to help them through, you know?
yeah, I don't know. I just fucking keep going. Like life's long. I feel like I don't know. I feel like I just took so much shit so serious that I'm
You're
like,
like, keep
I
walking.
think-
It's
I
a
think
long
for
road.
me,
at the time,
it would
at
be.
the time it meant a lot to me, but I looking back, I'm like, I took that way too serious. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I
but-
think for me, it would be. It'll all work itself out.
You got this.
Yeah, it'll all work itself out. You don't have to have so much control. You
yeah,
know?
the control
Yeah,
and the
that's the thing.
expectations and just yeah. I'm like, it's all good, dude. I'm like,
Yeah, relinquish control. I think
my
that's
favorite quote-
where rituals get
my favorite rap
weird
lyric
is
is
when control is involved.
yeah. I mean that's where the whole OCD thing comes in, where people like
An addiction.
it's like abusing, addicting
Yeah.
ritual. Yeah.
Wow, guys. I think we definitely went full circle here.
I think
Any,
so too, but
any closing statement?
you were going to talk about something.
Oh, just one of my favorite rap lyrics is it ain't all good, but it's all good.
It ain't all good,
Sometimes I
but it's all
sometimes I say that in my head.
Hey.
I'm like, all right, yeah, it's all good.
That's our ending statement right there.
love it.
Cheers. We went long, guys.
It ain't all good, but it's all good.
Keep
Hey.
Tell that to your
Aw.
children when you tuck them in.
Let's play out. Here we
Good
go.
night.
Here we go. Love from the fringe.